Hi there, I'm Francesca Amelia and welcome to my video on the Jacobean Era, Dark Wood, Dark Arts. I'm currently studying to become a professional valuer, and it is an extensive course. As you can imagine, there are a lot of topics trying to condense everything about everything into a few books. So I am finding that some of the sections are a little bit short, and I'm doing a lot of extra research, going down rabbit holes and off on tangents. And what I'd like to do with this series of videos is share some of the knowledge that I'm getting from the course itself, and then also the fun facts and interesting stories that I'm discovering along the way, and hoping that you find them as interesting as I do. At the moment, I'm studying Jacobean furniture, which might not sound fascinating, but it's really interesting what you can find out about just a simple stool, a simple piece of furniture, and the magic that it holds. So I hope you enjoy. The name Jacobean comes from the Latin for James, which is Jacobus, and it's designated for the reign of James I of England, who was also James VI of Scotland, but it was the first time that a monarch was ruling both countries at the same time. So a lot of furniture eras are named after kings and queens, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they had anything to do with the style or the design. It's just how they're correlated in history. And it's also important to note that the dates can therefore sometimes cross over. So, for example, in my course, it says that the Jacobean era would be 1603 until 1700. And that actually includes the reigns of James I, Charles I, Charles II, and James II, who ended in 1688. So, to save any confusion, when I'm talking about these dates, about this style of furniture, it is basically the majority of the 17th century. So here we have a picture of James I, and you can see from the picture he is a fancy fine fellow. It is a period of ruffs and cuffs. I think we should bring back ruffs and cuffs. But also, yes, very elaborate fashion style, and I have to say I am totally there for it. There was a lot going on in the Jacobean era. Big events, talking gunpowder plot, 30 Years' War in Europe, colonisation of America, so the Mayflower, first Thanksgiving, that was all happening. The Royal Society was founded, so everything is going off in art, science, philosophy, architecture, literature. The first novel in its format was written, and theatre. We're talking William Shakespeare, big hitters, more on him later. And it was a time of like really big religious conflict, a lot of changing of kings, but it was also a time when people really believed in witchcraft, witches, enchanters, and one of the biggest believers in that was James I. So I will get to all of that later, but first let's take a look at some Jacobean furniture. There are actually very few pieces of original Jacobean furniture in existence today, but we're talking wood, like heavy woods, dark wood, oak, pine, walnut, cherry, mainly oak when I picture big solid pieces of furniture, like heavy lines, but mixed with quite beautifully spiral turned legs, and they really weren't afraid of decoration. It was carvings of acorns and crowns and roses and acanthus leaves, and quite a sort of royal air about a lot of the design. One of the iconic pieces is the wainscot chair, which is one of the first sort of backed chairs. It was mostly stools before then, and this was named after the fine oak that was used on the panelling in the houses. And so other pieces would be three-legged stools, chests, cupboards, chests of drawers, and the wonderful little joint stool, which is what I want to speak about next. I mentioned that this was a period where people really believed in the dark arts, witchcraft, witches, witch hunting, and execution. I'm fascinated by folklore and I collect fairy tale books, so when I found out that the Jacobean joint stool had a connection to witches, I was intrigued. It was one of the most commonly used pieces of furniture. It would have been found in all houses of all classes. William Shakespeare actually references it in multiple plays across multiple years. It was commonly seen, on the stages even as props. So it was a simple stool, 4 legs, jointed stretchers at the bottom, and would have come in different shapes and sizes for different purposes. So it was believed at the time that witches could take stools, joint stools specifically, and enchant them to take on their appearance. So the stool would suddenly transform into the woman, which would allow her to trick her husband and go out and do witchy deeds and cause trouble. And this was even cited in a witch trial in Scotland, I think it was 1662, by a lady called Isabel Gowdry. And she basically detailed how witches could take items such as stools and brooms and place them at the end of the bed, say a spell, and then the item would transform into the woman and give the appearance that she was in bed next to her husband. So then she's off out the window. So it seems that it was very much ingrained into culture. It's also referenced by Shakespeare as a slight in King Lear, where the quote, I believe, is, "Cry your mercy, I took you for a joint stool," which is the fool suggesting God is a witch in disguise. So you can see that that really truly means that everybody understood that the simple stool was an iconic item of witchcraftery, which I find fascinating. Still on the subject of Shakespeare, I'm not sure if you've ever wondered where he got his inspiration for Macbeth from. Well, we actually have to look no further than James I. So you see what I did there, full circle. When you think of King James, you might think of the King James Bible, which he wrote and then delivered to every hotel in the land. But he also wrote a book before coming to the British throne called Demonology, which I didn't know about. So he was obviously obsessed with witches and witchcraft, and unfortunately torturing and executing witches. And this book, which must have taken extensive research, is in 3 parts, and it defines witchcraft, it's rituals, spells, talks about Satan, it categorises demons, and a number of the publications include a news pamphlet from a Scottish witch trial, the North Berwick witch trials, where King James actually oversaw the trials as judge. So a number of people were on trial, but I believe the pamphlet was called The Damnable Life of Dr. Fian, a notable sorcerer. A catchy title, but there was a lady there who was on trial, and she actually confessed to King James that she had tried to assassinate him on multiple occasions using witchcraft, including one time on All Hallows Eve, where she unfortunately sacrificed a cat to the sea, so a tempest would rise and sink the ships that King James was arriving in on. But as this hasn't happened, he put her to death. So it does seem that Will Shakespeare obviously got a copy of the book, because the witches, 3 witches in Macbeth, the rituals they're doing, and there are actually direct quotes from this news pamphlet in Demonology used in Macbeth, and then couple that with the Scottish themes and settings, and I think we can see that obviously it was a pretty major influence. So I really like that connection, and I hope you enjoyed the video of the facts that I found out when I was studying Jacobean furniture. I hope you enjoyed the content, and if you did, please leave a comment or a like or subscribe. That would be great, and I hope you enjoy more of it in the future. So that was Jacobean Era Dark Wood Dark Arts. Big events. We're talking gunpowder pot. I really can't say it. Gunpowder plot. That was invented. Theatre. Big playwrights. Will Smith. Not Will. Oh my God.